Well, I'd like to welcome you to our course. This is MV4460 Management of Modeling and Simulation Systems, which is typically called the capstone of the MOVES program. This is our first offering of the DL version of this course. So we're going to kind of learn as we go along here and see what works and what doesn't. But I want to go through, hopefully you've downloaded the syllabus by now. If you haven't, you might want to pause this and quickly download the syllabus so you can kind of follow along, because that's pretty much what I'm going to walk through in this introductory briefing. So just as a quick overview of what this course is really about, it's really meant to be a synthesis course. It's not a review and refresh course like you might have thought about as a capstone of, hey, let's talk about everything that we've talked about in the whole program. There's some of that, but my real intention is to synthesize, to sort of force you to think across some of the boundaries of things that you've maybe thought about so far in the program. So maybe you've done a deep dive into some sort of technology, and I'm going to kind of challenge you to think about maybe a business model behind that technology. How might it actually find its way into your simulation center? How might you do that? Those are some of the questions that we're going to ask. I want you to expect the unexpected. A lot of what we're going to talk about, you probably didn't even think was M&S, and most people would probably agree with you. But I'm going to try and make the argument that our job is actually really tough as M&S professionals, because almost everything touches us, and in a lot of ways we're kind of expected to have at least some level of expertise in everything, and that makes it really a challenge. So I'm going to really force you to stretch your boundaries. There's a lot of breadth and not a ton of depth in this course, but I'm going to hopefully plant some seeds so that as you move on past this program, maybe you'll pursue this a little bit further. We're going to talk a lot about business processes. We're going to talk about acquisition, preparing you to manage complexity and change in M&S programs. That's really a theme of this program, is that so much of what we do, it's shifting at such a rapid pace that sitting where you are and where you're going to be as you move on in your career is a real challenge, because you can't really even predict what the future holds. So how do you manage under those conditions? And there's actually a lot of work been done on that. This has been going on in the technology industry for a long time. So let's think about what we can steal from that, what we can learn from that, and apply to what we do in M&S. We're going to go through a number of tools of our trade, is what I call it, but this is, things like just the JSIDS process, contracting, and all that. We're gonna hit those fairly briefly. Again, I'm not trying to be a business course, but I want to make sure that you've at least had some introductory contact with all those key topics. Then we're going to go through technologies, and actually, more appropriately, you're going to go through technologies, because I want to know where you're most interested, and we're going to get into specific technologies that you want to pursue, and then you're going to put together some briefings and brief them out for our classmates and myself as we talk about what you're interested in. And we're going to focus on hard problems in M&S. What I mean by a hard problem in M&S is something that's not just sort of just a natural next step. What are some of the really hard problems? Think about, in medical modeling and simulation, even in mainstream modeling and simulation, what are some of the things that we sure wish we knew how to do, but we really don't know how to do it? The technology doesn't even exist to do it. What might those be, and what doors might it open if we could accomplish those things? And then we're going to take sort of a look ahead at finishing up the program now. What's going to happen next? So quickly, our learning objectives. We're going to start off, this may seem like a silly thing to do in the last course of our program, but what is modeling and simulation? We're going to talk about that. We're going to challenge you to actually put a definition on it. What do we mean when we say modeling and simulation? Or maybe more appropriately, what don't we mean when we say modeling and simulation? Can we tell you, what are the parts? What are the relationships between what we do and what other people do? What about people who use modeling and simulation but don't develop it? A lot of different user pools of different disciplines that rely on modeling and simulation to get done what they do, but they're not really simulationists. So what makes us different? Then we're We're going to describe some similarities and differences between how the computing industry operates, because it's technology and we really want to rely on what we know about how technology functions in terms of how we plan for the future and what we're going to do here. And we'll think about what does this mean in terms of how we think strategically and operationally for what we're going to do for the rest of our careers. We're going to talk about, you might have heard this buzzword, disruptive technologies, and I do refer to it as a buzzword because I see it all the time, and it's pretty clear to me in most cases that people who use the term have no idea what it really means or that it even has a real definition. Well, it has a real definition, and you're going to know it by the end of this course, and you're going to know how to apply it, how to think about things disruptively, be able to think about potential technologies that might disrupt you, or that things you might be involved with that might be disruptive to the industry. It's not a dirty word. It's not bad. It's a good thing. It's where real innovation comes from. And I really want you to embrace this when you come through this and not be scared of it. And then we're gonna talk about being able to identify primary tools and technologies that are used by M&S professionals. Just to make sure, I just want to make sure that there's nothing left on the floor that having been through this program, somebody would say, hey, you took that program out at the Naval Postgraduate School in Modeling and Simulation. What can you tell me about virtualization? At least you've heard the word. You can probably tell them a little bit about what it means, and maybe even a little bit about why an M&S person might care. You don't have to be an expert in it, but I at least want to make sure you've touched on those things. And then lastly, we want to be able to look at burgeoning technologies that might impact M&S in the future, analyze how they might change how our industry operates. Now, what they might be disruptive, they might not, but we want to be able to take a peek ahead. So what are we going to ask you to do? Really two main things. There's really three things, but there's three pieces of our course. The main thing is going to be this capstone project, and you've already been working on some of this. It's going to be a 6-part project. Some parts are bigger than others. Some of them are really simple. It builds on what you've started in some previous courses. And the end result here is that we want to, not that you're going to submit this as a real proposal for funding, but the idea is that you've been through the process of, in your very first course, you thought about developing hypotheses and identifying a real research topic, and you put those things together. And now we're going to drag this all the way through the program in the last piece, and we're going to be talking about, well, what might that proposal look like? Are we developing a technology? Are we studying an existing technology or a technique? Are we doing an experiment? What is this? And let's put it all together with budgets and timelines and everything that we need to explain so that we could potentially get funding for this work. And then the other thing you're going to be doing is a technology briefing. So you're going to select a topic from a list. I'll give you a list, but I don't want you to be constrained by that list. I want you to make up, if there's something that you are particularly interested in, you're interested in, medical mannequins for simulation. You're interested in haptic displays. You tell me what you're interested in, and that's what I want you to do. I don't care how refined and specific that technology might actually be. That's what I want you to do. And you're going to prepare a briefing for the class, and we'll be doing this later in the quarter. There's a whole section of the course that's going to be all of you. And you'll be putting these briefings together. We'll make sure that they all get online. And that is the briefing material for that section, is you doing the briefing. And so you can use Illuminate or use the narration feature in PowerPoint or whatever works best for you. I'm not going to enforce anything on you, but I want you to identify some technology, describe what the state of the art happens to be, how does it relate to what we care about in M&S, how is it used today, why is it important, and then where might it be headed in the future. And of course, the last thing I haven't mentioned here is we're going to be doing a lot of discussing. When I teach this class in person, most people say that the thing that they really value the most out of it is the discussion. So we're going to do a lot of online forums and discussions, and I want you to participate in that as much as you possibly can. We're going to do some readings just as prep for two particular areas. One is this disruptive technology idea. If you haven't already read anything from the Innovator's Dilemma, I think you'll really enjoy it. All of these books are very readable. They're not super technical. They're not going to be over your head, I promise. But Christensen's book in particular is excellent. He has some wonderful examples, some of which we'll use, you'll see in the briefings, about disruptive technology and what it means to us as when we're managing technology and technology teams. What does this mean to us? So that's really important. And the other is Chesborough's book on open innovation. Actually, Christensen's book is no longer 2003. He updated it in 2011, so that's the version that you probably have is 2011. Chesborough coined the term open innovation. I think this is, in my opinion, is one of the most important things you can walk out of this class with, is this idea that it used to be in the government that we were very vertically integrated. We did everything from basic research to building actual products that we put on ships and put in aircraft and gave to soldiers and did everything. And that's just not the way the world works anymore. The world works under the rules of what he calls open innovation, where we have objectives, we're investing in science and technology, basic research, all the way through applied research, but we have constantly got to be watching outside, not only just outside of our own funding chain, but outside of our industry for what other industries are doing, because it might influence where we actually go. So it's important to have your ship steering in a particular direction, but it's also important to be planning for rudder corrections along the way and to be as efficient as possible, and that is, and most importantly, to be leveraging what other people, what other companies, what other industries are actually doing. And then the last book I have listed here, which is optional, is The Cathedral and the Bazaar. Also because it's so important in terms of what we talk about in terms of open source and the open source movement. I'm going to actually, one of the key papers in this is publicly available, so I'm going to make that available to you in our learning management system. But if that's a topic that really interests you, I highly recommend the book. But it's more software oriented, so if you're not a software person, you might not want to get the book. Maybe just read the paper. And there's going to be a lot of readings that I'm going to post to the website. Another point I wanted to make, and I'm sure I'll touch on this later, is there is way more material in the that's going to be posted here than you can possibly get through in this course. There is absolutely no expectation that you're going to read all this stuff, that you're even going to review all this stuff. I'd like you to try and get through the lectures if you possibly can. I've tried to keep them short and very topical so you can get them through them quickly, and they're pretty passive. You can watch them while you're having your lunch or whatever you're doing. It should be easy to get through the lecture material, but there's a lot of extra reading material there, and I just sort of, I've been teaching this class for a number of years, and it's kind of meandered here and there through the years as the interests of the students kind of take me from one place to another. And rather than keep refining the material online, what I like to do is just keep making it available to you. Even in this class alone, you'll have some people who are really interested in one thing, other people are really interested in another, and it's a capstone. I want you to get the best experience you can have out of it, so I leave all that material up. But please do not, have the blood run out of your head when you look at everything that's online, because there's no way you can get through it all, and I want to make it as available as possible to you. So even after the course is over, you can still get anything you want that I've posted here. So a quick top-level schedule of what our topics are. We're going to start by talking about modeling and simulation, what it is and what it isn't. And this is actually particularly interesting to us because we played a big role in defining it, or defining the modeling and simulation discipline. And of course, there's an argument about whether it even is an academic discipline. So we're going to start there. And we're going to get into a section I call technology and change. And this is going to have a lot to do with the economics of computing, disruptive technology theory, open innovation, tech transfer, intellectual property, all those sorts of things. It's a sort of like a mini business course I'm going to drop inside of our capstone, mainly because I think it's a lot of material that you probably haven't had before. I think it's so important to what we do. Understanding the basics is really critical. Then we're going to get into an area called tools of the trade, where we'll talk about acquisition and contracting, software development. Information assurance is becoming a big deal for us in the government. So what if you have all these cool simulators if we can't even run them on our networks? Open source is a big deal. We'll talk about operations and facilities. How do you configure a laboratory and maintain it? Then we'll move into technologies. This is, as I said before, the area that you guys are going to drive. but we'll make a bunch of things available, and I've got a lot of briefings from past students if there's topics that you're particularly interested in. But things like interoperability of simulations, visual display and interaction, gaming, mobile devices, social networking, cloud computing, the list goes on, and I want you to drive this where you want it to go. And then we'll finish up at the end by talking about a career in modeling and simulation. I'm sort of working on an assumption that you came into this program because you in some way see yourself as a modeling and simulationist that is a part of this discipline. Well, what does that actually mean? How do you keep current in this stuff? I mean, when you look at the list of things that we're going to touch on, you can't be an expert in all of them. So how do you keep up on it? There are advanced degrees. There's ways of continuing on. If you really like this, you can do more. So we'll talk about that when we finish up. It's one of the questions I often get from people as they're exiting either the certificate or the master's program is, what do you read and how do you keep up on things? So we'll talk about that at the end. And of course, everybody wants to know how grades are going to be done. We're just going to split it in thirds here as our first go round here, as far as your participation, which is your online part. The capstone project, those 6 pieces, is going to be a third, and then your technology briefing will be a third. We'll kind of take it from there and kind of see how things work out. Hopefully, I'm hoping that it's about split in thirds in terms of how much effort it's going to take on your part to get through all this. But we'll kind of try and spread it through the entire quarter if possible. And I think that's as far as we're going to go here with our syllabus. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to email me about how we're going to run things this quarter. But that's just sort of a quick overview. Just want to walk you through what we're going to be in for this quarter. And again, I just want to reiterate, there's a lot here, but I want you to kind of, it's important. The capstone will have the most impact with you, and you'll enjoy it the most if you kind of let your interest kind of guide you through the material and really drill into the stuff that you're most interested in, and make sure that your projects allow you to do some extra work in that area. I think you'll enjoy it the most.